Every country on Earth is in debt. The United States owes tens of trillions of dollars. Europe carries trillions more. Japan, China, Britain, emerging economies, oil states, export giants. Different flags, different systems, same condition. So here is the question that should make us uneasy. If everyone owes, who exactly is owed? Because this is no longer just a story about budgets, deficits, or accounting. It is a story about power hidden inside balance sheets, about a world held together by promises so large that no nation can truly step outside them. We are told debt is a burden, but in the modern world, debt is also structure. It shapes states, markets, pensions, taxes, and survival itself. And the deeper you follow the chain, the stranger it becomes. The world does not simply owe money to someone else. In many ways, it owes money to itself. But that does not mean everyone stands on equal ground. If every country owes, then the picture becomes stranger. The world appears to be in debt to itself. Governments issue bonds, banks buy them. Pension funds hold them. Central banks absorb them. Foreign reserves are parked inside them. What looks like a chain between nations often turns out to be a circle inside the same financial order. But a circle is not the same as equality. To say that the world owes itself sounds reassuring. It suggests balance. It suggests that no one is really in control, that the system is simply looping promises from one institution to another. But that is only half the truth. Because inside that circle, not everyone stands in the same place. Some collect interest, some provide collateral, some write policy, and some pay slowly through taxes, inflation, weaker public services, and lives shaped by decisions they never made. So the deeper question is no longer who owes. It is this: if the system is circular, who stands at the strongest point inside the circle? To understand who holds the world's debt, we have to leave the present behind. We have to go back to war, not to Wall Street, not to modern central banks, but to late 17th century England, when the crown was fighting France, money was running short, and gold alone could no longer carry the weight of the state. That is where modern public debt begins. Not as a theory of growth, not as a peaceful tool of development, but as a survival mechanism. The government needed money fast, more than taxes could raise in the moment, more than metal already in the treasury. So it made a different kind of promise. Lend to the state now, and the state will repay you later, with interest, backed by future taxes. That promise changed everything. In 1694, the Bank of England was created to help manage this new arrangement. What emerged was revolutionary. The state could spend before it possessed. War could be financed not only by gold in hand, but by confidence in revenue not yet collected. And from that moment on, debt was no longer just obligation. It became power organized in advance. What began in England did not stay in England. The model spread. Across Europe, states learned the same lesson. A government that could borrow reliably could fight longer, build faster, and survive shocks that would have broken older kingdoms. Debt stopped looking like weakness. It started to look like credibility. The Netherlands refined it. France copied it, though not always successfully. And later, the United States adopted the same logic to fund revolution, expansion, and war. Something profound had changed. In earlier centuries, power depended on what a ruler already possessed: gold in the treasury, land under control, taxes already collected. Now, power could be pulled forward from the future. A trusted state could command resources before it owned them. That changed the architecture of empire. Armies still marched, ships still sailed, but behind them stood bond markets, lenders, and the promise of future revenue. Empires no longer expanded by steel alone. They expanded through credit. And the states that inspired trust could reach further, last longer, and reorganize the world more completely than those that could not. Now bring the story forward. When people hear that a country is drowning in debt, they often imagine a foreign power holding the leash. One nation owned by another, one flag borrowing from a rival flag. But modern sovereign debt usually works differently. Most of it is not held by enemies abroad. It is held much closer to home. Banks hold it, pension funds hold it, insurance companies hold it, mutual funds hold it, and central banks often hold enormous amounts of it as well. That means a large share of national debt sits inside the same society that issued it, not outside the system, but inside it. So when a government pays interest, the money does not simply leave the country. Much of it circulates through domestic institutions, retirement accounts, financial markets, and balance sheets that support everyday economic life. This does not make the debt harmless, but it does make the picture more complex. A country is rarely owned by one foreign hand alone. More often, it is bound inside a web of promises held by its own financial architecture. So the real creditor does not appear as a single face. It appears as a layered structure. The first layer is domestic. Banks, pension funds, insurers, and local asset managers hold government debt from inside the same society. They give the system stability, but they also tie public finance to private balance sheets. The second layer is foreign. Other countries, reserve managers, and overseas institutions hold sovereign bonds as stores of value, collateral, and strategic security. They do not control everything, but they can still matter when trust begins to thin. The third layer is the central bank. It can absorb debt, steady markets, and manufacture liquidity when panic spreads. That gives it extraordinary power over time, interest, and survival. And above all of them sits the fourth layer, the market itself. Not one institution, but the price-setting machinery that judges credibility every day. So this is the deeper secret. A nation is not watched by one creditor. It is held inside a hierarchy of creditors, each with a different kind of leverage. Here is where the system becomes more intricate. A government issues debt. The market buys it. Banks hold it. Then, those same bonds are used as collateral, solid, trusted, liquid enough to support more lending on top of them. So, one promise does not stay in one place. It becomes the foundation for other promises. And when stress rises, the central bank can step in and buy that debt back, exchanging newly created money for government bonds already circulating through the system. That is the loop. The state issues an obligation. The financial system treats it as an asset. Banks use it to stabilize balance sheets. Markets price it. Central banks absorb it. And new liquidity flows outward again. Which means the debt of one institution becomes the safety of another. This is why sovereign debt matters so much. It is not just money owed. It is collateral, confidence, and structure. In the modern order, public debt does not sit at the edge of the economy. It sits at the center, quietly holding the system together. And this is the part that makes the modern system harder to see clearly. Governments are not expected to eliminate their debt the way a household is expected to eliminate a mortgage. They are expected to keep it credible. That is a very different idea. The system does not need sovereign debt to vanish. It needs sovereign debt to remain trusted enough to be rolled forward. When old bonds come due, governments usually do not empty the treasury and erase the burden. They issue new bonds to replace the old ones. That is refinancing. That is rollover. So the debt survives by renewing itself. This is why the numbers keep rising without the system automatically collapsing. Because the point is not final repayment. The point is continuous confidence. As long as investors believe the state can service the debt, markets keep buying, banks keep holding, and the machine keeps turning. Which means public debt does not disappear because the system is not built around ending the obligation. It is built around keeping the obligation believable.
But here the story turns darker. If the world owes money to itself, then why do crises never feel equal? Why is it that when the system shakes, ordinary people lose jobs, lose savings, lose public services, long before the architecture above them begins to fall? Because owing ourselves is only true in the most abstract sense. In reality, the flows are uneven. Interest does not move through society like rain. It does not fall equally on everyone. It rises through the system, toward the institutions, funds, and asset holders positioned to receive it. While taxes come broadly, inflation bites broadly, spending cuts land broadly. But the income from debt ownership is concentrated far more narrowly. So the burden is social. The benefit is selective. That is why debt is never just an arrangement between countries. It is also an arrangement within countries, between those who hold financial claims and those whose lives are shaped by servicing them. And that is why the public feels the pain first. Not because debt is unreal, but because its rewards and its sacrifices are distributed on very different terms.
Follow the money one step further, and the social shape of debt becomes harder to ignore. Taxes are collected broadly, from wages, consumption, property, labor, ordinary life. But interest payments do not return with the same symmetry. Some of that money does flow into pension funds, insurance pools, and savings institutions that support millions of people. That part matters. It is real, but it is not the whole picture. The gains from debt ownership are not distributed evenly. The more financial assets you hold, the more of that stream you are positioned to receive. Which means the system does not simply move money between nations. It also moves money within nations. From a broad base of taxpayers toward a narrower class of asset holders. That is why sovereign debt is never just a geopolitical story. It is also a social one. A story about whose balance sheet is protected, whose income compounds, whose public services are squeezed, and whose future is quietly used to stabilize the present. Debt does not only organize states. It helps organize class, security, and inequality inside them.
For years, Greece lived inside the same illusion that sustains every debt system. As long as confidence held, the creditors were mostly invisible. They existed in bond markets, balance sheets, institutional mandates, and polite financial language. Distant, technical, manageable. Then confidence broke. In 2010, Greek debt was no longer treated as routine sovereign paper. Yields surged, borrowing costs exploded, and suddenly the hidden structure had names. The European Central Bank, the IMF, official lenders, bond markets demanding proof that the promises would still be honored. This is what happens when trust disappears. The system stops feeling abstract. It becomes immediate. Budgets are cut. Public services shrink. Wages fall. Unemployment rises. An entire society is told that stability must be restored, even if everyday life becomes less stable first. And that is the darker lesson.
A bailout can save a financial structure without truly saving the people living under it. Because when sovereign debt breaks, the first rescue is often for credibility. The human cost comes after.
Greece showed what happens when trust breaks inside a rich financial bloc. Sri Lanka showed something even more immediate. There is a crucial difference between debt in your own currency and debt in someone else's. If a government owes in its own currency, it may still face inflation, austerity, or crisis. But if it owes in foreign currency, the danger is sharper. It cannot simply create the dollars it needs. And when those dollars run out, the crisis leaves the balance sheet and enters daily life. That is what happened in Sri Lanka. Foreign reserves collapsed. Debt payments loomed. Imports became harder to finance. Fuel ran short. Food became more expensive. Electricity faltered. And political order itself began to crack. This is the point where sovereign debt stops sounding abstract. No longer a matter of bond spreads or institutional language. Now it is transport, cooking gas, supermarket shelves, hours of darkness, public anger. That is the deeper lesson. A debt crisis becomes truly dangerous when a nation can no longer buy what keeps ordinary life functioning. At that point, money is no longer just finance. It becomes survival. At the deepest level, markets do not simply lend to governments. They judge them. Every day, through interest rates, bond demand, and the price of rolling over old promises, markets decide which states can keep breathing cheaply and which must pay for survival. That is where debt stops being accounting and becomes political fate. A low borrowing cost gives a government room to spend, room to stabilize, room to delay pain.
Low borrowing costs.
But when rates rise, that room begins to close.
And delay pain.
Suddenly, more of the national budget must go to debt service. Less is left for wages, infrastructure, hospitals, schools, energy, defense, ordinary order. The numbers change first. Then the state changes with them. That is the hidden power of the market. It does not always overthrow governments directly. Sometimes it simply makes their choices smaller. And when a country depends on constant refinancing, higher rates do more than increase pressure. They rewrite the limits of what that society can still afford to be. This is the point where debt becomes survival. Because in the modern world, the cost of borrowing is often the cost of remaining governable. Bring the story back to the present, and the paradox becomes even stranger. The United States still carries enormous debt. So does Japan. So does Europe. And yet these systems do not survive in spite of government debt. In many ways, they survive through it. Because sovereign bonds are no longer just liabilities sitting on a state ledger. They are the foundation of the modern financial order. Banks hold them as safe assets. Funds use them as collateral. Central banks absorb them in crisis. Global markets price everything else against them. That is why the idea of simply paying it all off sounds cleaner than it really is. If a major state tried to erase its debt too quickly, the world would not become suddenly healthier. It could become less stable. Safe assets would shrink. Liquidity would tighten, collateral would disappear, and a system built on trusted public debt would begin to shake from the center. So this is the modern paradox. The debt is dangerous, but the sudden absence of it could be dangerous too. So in the end, the phrase is not entirely wrong. We do, in a systemic sense, owe much of it to ourselves. Governments owe bondholders. Bondholders include banks, pension funds, insurers, central banks, and institutions woven into the same society. In that narrow structural sense, the circle is real. But that is only half the truth. Because a system can be circular and still be unequal. To say we owe it to ourselves makes the structure sound neutral, balanced, almost harmless. But societies are not flat. They are layered. Not everyone owns the same assets. Not everyone receives the same interest. Not everyone can protect themselves the same way from inflation, austerity, or shrinking public goods. So yes, the debt may circulate inside the same national body, but the power inside that body is distributed unevenly, which means the sentence is technically true at the level of accounting and deeply incomplete at the level of lived reality. That is the mask of the system. It speaks in the language of we, while rewarding and burdening very different parts of society in very different ways.
So in the end, the world does not owe one master, one empire, or one visible hand standing above everyone else. It owes an architecture. An architecture built from promises, from assets, from taxes, from balance sheets, from institutions powerful enough to turn belief into order. That is what sovereign debt really became. Not just money borrowed, but trust organized, power extended, time purchased in advance. As long as that trust holds, the system continues. The bonds keep trading. The budgets keep stretching. The markets keep pricing the future as if the structure will remain intact. But when trust breaks, the language changes. The question is no longer, who is the creditor? It becomes something colder. Who will be rescued? Who will absorb the loss? Whose balance sheet will be protected?
The question is simple.
And who will be left
Whose
underneath
balance
the
sheet
falling
will be
weight
protected?
of the promises?
And who will be
That is why debt is never just finance. It is a map of power inside a civilization. And when that map begins to crack, history stops looking abstract very quickly.